Today we're talking about the Boshin War. And this isn't just any conflict. This is the violent, decisive civil war that, in just 18 months, ended centuries of samurai rule and literally gave birth to modern Japan.
All right, so take a look at this. This is so much more than just a battle painting, right? It's like a snapshot of a huge turning point in history. You're literally seeing a society get torn apart and completely remade, a place where ancient traditions were colliding head-on with these unstoppable new ideas and technologies. This was the final, fiery chapter for the samurai.
Which, leads us to the big question here. How? How did 250 years of samurai rule just vanish in only 18 months? I mean, think about that. The Tokugawa Shogunate had been in charge for over 2.5 centuries. So how did it all come crashing down so fast? Well, the answer really starts when the outside world decided to come knocking.
All right, so let's set the stage. For 200 years, Japan was basically a world unto itself. They had this super strict policy of isolation. But that all changed, and it changed fast. When Western powers showed up with their powerful steamships and cannons, they basically decided Japan was open for business, whether Japan liked it or not.
And the pressure just built up with incredible speed. I mean, check this out. In 1854, you've got American Commodore Perry literally forcing Japan's ports open. This leads to a series of what were called unequal treaties, which a lot of Japanese people saw just deeply humiliating. Then, by 1863, the emperor himself issues an order to expel the barbarians, and that just channeled all this anger directly at the shogunate for, failing to protect the nation. The final piece of the puzzle falls into place in 1866, when two powerful and normally rival domains, Satsuma and Chōshū, form a secret alliance. Their goal? To overthrow the government.
And this right here, this became the rallying cry for the whole opposition. Sun no joy. Revere the emperor, expel the barbarians. It was such a simple but incredibly powerful idea. It basically said, look, the shogun has failed us. Our loyalty should be to the emperor, and our goal should be to kick the foreigners out of Japan. This one slogan united all these dissatisfied samurai and nobles from all across the country.
So the country is right on the brink of chaos. The shogun, seeing this, makes a really calculated move to try and avoid an all-out war. But honestly, it was too little, too late. The opposition, they weren't interested in some kind of compromise. They wanted a total, complete restoration of imperial power.
Okay, so let's break down the two sides in this fight. It makes it a lot clearer. On one side, you've got the imperial court. They're led by these powerful Western domains, Satsuma and Chōshū. And get this, they were rapidly modernizing their armies, a lot of the time with unofficial British support. Then, on the other side, you have the Tokugawa Shogunate. They were backed by loyal northern domains like Aizu, and they were also modernizing, mostly with French help, but their forces were this kind of volatile mix of brand new technology and very traditional samurai ways.
So the shogun, Tokugawa Yoshinobu, he's a smart guy. He sees his position as getting weaker and weaker. So he does something absolutely unprecedented. He abdicates. Yeah, he just hands power back to the emperor. He was hoping that the Tokugawa family could still play a major role in a new unified government and, hopefully avoid a bloody civil war.
It was a really clever political gamble, for sure, but it completely backfired. The hardliners from Satsuma and Chōshū, they just seized the imperial palace in Kyoto. They had the young Emperor Meiji declare a full restoration of his power. They formally abolished the shogunate, and this is the crucial part, they ordered the seizure of all Tokugawa lands. That single move made war totally inevitable.
So when the war finally came, it wasn't just a clash of armies, it was a clash of centuries. The future of Japan wasn't going to be decided by swords anymore. It was all about who could master the tools of modern warfare the fastest.
And this just illustrates that contrast perfectly. I mean, look, you had troops in Western-style uniforms, marching right alongside warriors in traditional samurai armor. You'd have officers from the shogunate wearing French uniforms, while their soldiers were carrying these ancient, almost medieval matchlock rifles. It was literally a war being fought in two different eras at the exact same time.
And the technology itself, man, it tells such a huge part of the story. The imperial forces had a decisive edge here. They were armed with modern European rifles, things like the Minié and the breech-loading Snyders. These were far more accurate, had much longer range, and you could fire them way faster than the outdated muskets that a lot of the shogunate troops were still using.
Now this is where it gets really interesting, and it might surprise you. The shogunate actually had more men. We're talking around 150,000 troops to the Imperial's 120,000. But this just proves the point, right? In this new kind of warfare, having superior technology and a better strategy mattered way more than just having more bodies on the field.
And you can see how this technological edge played out right here on the campaign map. The Imperial Army, they're advancing from their strongholds in the west. They win a key early victory at Toba Fushimi, which is right outside Kyoto. And after that, the tide just turned completely. They swept east, and by May of 1868, they had surrounded the shogun's capital, Edo, which, by the way, is modern-day Tokyo, and it surrendered without a major fight.
But the war wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The most loyal of the Tokugawa retainers, they absolutely refused to give up. They fled to the far north of Japan to make one last, desperate stand.
So what was left of the shogun's navy and army, they managed to escape to the northern island of Hokkaido. And there, they did something truly radical, something nobody expected. They established their own independent nation, dedicated to preserving their way of life, while also planning to develop the island with modern tech.
They called it the Republic of Ezo. A republic. Think about that for a second. In 19th century Japan, it was the first and, spoiler alert, the only one in the nation's history. They actually modeled it on the United States and even had an elected president. It was just this bold final act of defiance.
But, it couldn't last. The brand new Imperial Japanese Army and Navy arrived in force. The Battle of Hakodate in 1869, well, it completely crushed the Republic of Ezo. And with that, the last organized resistance was over. The military part of the Meiji Restoration was complete.
All right, so the war is over. The fighting has stopped. What came next? What was the ultimate legacy of this incredible conflict that tore Japan apart? Well, here's maybe the greatest irony of the entire Boshin War. The Revere the Emperor, Expel the Barbarians faction, they won. So what's the first thing they did? They immediately abandoned the goal of expelling foreigners. It's wild, right? They realized that to protect Japan, they had to join the modern world, not fight it. So they launched this intense, super rapid program of westernization. Over time, the war got a little romanticized. People started calling it a nearly bloodless revolution. But the reality is, around 8,200 people were killed. Now, compared to Japan's total population, that might seem like a small number, but for the people who actually fought in it, this was a very real, very painful conflict.
Ultimately, you can think of the Boshin War as the furnace where modern Japan was forged. It completely destroyed the old feudal system, it unified the country under a central government, and it set Japan on a path to becoming a major global power in an incredibly short amount of time.
And that kind of leaves us with one final thought to chew on. The war brought this immense progress, for sure, but it also completely destroyed a centuries-old way of life for the samurai. So it makes you think, when progress demands that a tradition has to end, what is the ultimate cost? What gets left behind?